It started quietly. Like most habits, it didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, like fog rolling over a sleeping city. I didn't even notice it at first. A notebook here, a reminder there. A quick list of tasks scribbled down at the edge of a morning coffee. It felt innocent, helpful even. Write things down, get things done. That's what the world told me. That's what every productivity book promised. That's what the successful people seem to do. Track, optimize, control every hour like it was slipping sand through their fingers. So I did what everyone else did. I started writing lists. Every day. Little boxes waiting to be filled, clean lines organizing the chaos of life. I wrote them on paper. I wrote them in apps. I wrote them on my hand when I ran out of space. Tasks, goals, reminders, tiny pieces of a life I thought I was building. But slowly, so slowly, I barely noticed something else began to grow between the lines. A noise. Not an audible sound, but something deeper, a pressure beneath the surface of my thoughts, an itch I couldn't scratch. The more lists I wrote, the louder it became. Because with every task I completed, 10 more arrived. With every day I organized, tomorrow loomed larger, and the lists, the very things that were supposed to bring me peace, began to chain me down. It wasn't clarity I was building. It was control, disguised as discipline. I became afraid of blank space, afraid of unscheduled time, afraid of the parts of life that didn't fit neatly into a checkbox. And the lists were everywhere. Wake up at 7 o'clock, drink water 500 milliliters, meditate 10 min, work 4 hours, walk 30 min, read 20 pages. Everything that once felt alive, spontaneous, human, was now a task. Even rest had a number next to it. Even silence had a timer set. And what I didn't realize, what no productivity guru told me, was that there is a cost to living this way. The cost is not visible. It doesn't show up in metrics or charts. It shows up in the soul, in the way life stops feeling like life and starts feeling like management. Like you're no longer here to experience anything, only to record it, optimize it, and move on. I didn't know it then, but I had built a cage, and I was sitting inside it, voluntarily, surrounded by perfect lists, surrounded by endless plans, surrounded by the noise of control whispering in my ear that if I just kept writing, just kept planning, I would finally feel safe. But I didn't feel safe. I felt tired, empty, disconnected from the very life I was trying to organize. And one day, without drama, without a plan, I just stopped. I closed the notebook. I shut down the app. I left the to-do list unfinished. And for the first time in years, I let a day begin without knowing where it would go. Without writing it down, without controlling it, without checking anything off, without trying to catch time, just living, breathing, watching. I thought the noise would get louder, but something else happened. The noise began to fade, and something far more quiet, far more beautiful began to take its place. Something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Silence. Real silence. The kind that waits for you when you finally stop chasing life like it's running away from you. It didn't happen overnight. Turning life into a schedule is not something we choose in a single moment. It happens quietly, like a slow tightening around the edges of your day. At first, it feels like structure, like order, like control. But then, somewhere along the way, the schedule stops serving you, and you start serving the schedule. I didn't see it clearly at first. I told myself I was being productive. I told myself I was being responsible. I told myself this was how grown-ups lived. But under the surface, something fragile was breaking. The first thing to disappear was wonder. Days stopped being days. They became units of time, blocks, sections, color-coded rectangles on a glowing screen. Morning routine, deep work, lunch break, reply to emails, take a walk, read, sleep. I had created a perfect machine, but I wasn't living inside it. I was trapped. Because the truth no one tells you is this: schedules don't just organize time, they begin to shape who you are. Slowly, relentlessly, invisibly. I stopped noticing small things. I stopped pausing to look out the window for no reason. I stopped wandering. I stopped losing time. And losing time, real time, alive time, is where life used to happen. I didn't realize how much I missed the empty spaces between tasks. Those were the moments when the world used to speak to me. The quiet moment after finishing a cup of coffee when the sun touched the table just right. The empty minutes walking to nowhere in particular. The small, sacred pauses between doing and being. But when life becomes a schedule, there is no room for these moments. Because schedules hate empty space. They see it as waste. And soon, without noticing, I began to see it that way too. If I wasn't filling time, I was wasting it. If I wasn't moving forward, I was falling behind. Even joy became an item on a list. Read for pleasure 20 minutes. Watch movie 2 hours. Call friend 15 minutes. I was managing life like a project. I was measuring life like a resource. I was surviving life, not living it. And yet beneath all of it, a quiet voice remained. A part of me I had forgotten. A part of me that didn't care about productivity, didn't care about optimization, didn't care about checking every box. A part of me that just wanted to be here, alive, present, without a list, without a plan, without turning every second into a transaction. That voice was weak at first, barely audible beneath the noise of alarms and reminders and goals. But it was there, waiting, not asking for anything, just waiting for me to remember. Life is not a schedule. Life is a moment, unfolding, changing, breathing, and it doesn't need to be managed. It needs to be lived. It didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like fear. The morning I didn't write a to-do list was not cinematic. There was no music playing, no grand decision made, no declaration to myself. It was quiet, almost awkward. I sat there staring at the empty page where my list should be, feeling like I had forgotten how to exist without instructions. My mind panicked before my body did. What if I forget something important? What if I waste the day? What if I do nothing? That question echoed the loudest. What if I do nothing? And then, beneath that fear, something even deeper surfaced. Would that be so bad? It was strange how radical that felt. To let a day happen. To stop controlling it. to let life breathe without supervision. But letting go of the list was harder than I expected. Because the list wasn't just paper, it wasn't just words. It was armor, a fragile shield between me and the vast, unpredictable nature of being alive. Without the list, I felt exposed, unstructured, undefined, but also strangely untouched, as if for the first time in years, nothing owned me. No app, no reminder, no box demanding a check mark. Just space, just time, just me. It was unsettling at first, because structure had given me comfort, even if that comfort was cold, even if that comfort came with chains. Now there was only silence. But in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Permission. Permission to exist without a purpose, permission to move without measuring, permission to feel without explaining. And that first listless day was messy. I didn't become enlightened. I didn't suddenly transform into my best self. I wandered, I sat, I forgot things, I remembered others. But it was real. It was human. The hours unfolded not as tasks, but as experiences. I didn't complete the day. I lived it. And that was enough. That night, when I lay down to sleep, I realized something strange. I hadn't wasted the day. I had actually felt it, fully, without a filter, without dividing it into accomplishments, without breaking it apart into achievements. It wasn't productive. It was alive. And slowly, the fear began to fade. In its place, curiosity. What would happen if I let go again? What would life look like without being managed? Without a map? Without control? The next morning, I didn't pick up the pen. And the world didn't fall apart. It waited for me, just like it always had, ready to begin, with or without a list. Something shifts when you stop dividing your time into tasks. Not immediately, not all at once, but gradually, like watching ice melt in a glass. The lines you once drew around your day begin to fade. The hours no longer move in straight, efficient lines. They begin to curve, to pause, to expand. And that's when you begin to notice something you had forgotten. Time is not solid, it's soft. And within it, there is space. Real space. Unstructured, unscheduled, alive. For years I had treated time like a machine, something to be controlled, tracked, counted, but without a list, without the grid of expectations pressed into every moment. Time became something else entirely. It became empty. Not in the way that frightens us, not the void, not the nothingness we fear when we disconnect from distraction, but a quiet emptiness, an open field, a space where things could happen or not happen without judgment. I remember sitting on the floor one afternoon, with the window open, the breeze moving through the curtains, and realizing I had nowhere to be. And more than that, I didn't feel guilty about it. There was no voice reminding me what I should be doing, no whisper saying I was wasting time, just stillness. It felt like returning to something ancient, something buried under years of noise and effort and striving, a kind of inner rhythm, slower, quieter, but deeply alive. Without a list, I no longer rushed through tasks, because there were no tasks, just life. Brushing my teeth wasn't item number 3, it was just brushing my teeth. Eating wasn't fuel for the next task, it was a pause, a ritual. Even walking, just walking, became an act of presence, not progress. And in that space, something unexpected arrived. Ideas, memories, feelings. Not the ones I planned to have, but the ones that had been waiting in silence. Grief I hadn't processed, joy I hadn't noticed, dreams I had shelved because they didn't fit in a category. They came, uninvited, and filled the space I had once given to productivity. And for the first time, I had time to listen. Time wasn't something I chased anymore. It became something I entered. Like a room, like a body, like a home. I used to think time was slipping through my fingers, but the truth is, I had been slipping through time, too fast, too distracted, too controlled. Without my lists, time became deep again. I stopped measuring hours and started feeling them. They stretched, they breathed, they opened. And in that opening, I remembered. Not everything needs to be done. Not everything needs to be captured. Some things simply need to be experienced fully, quietly, slowly. And those things, they don't live on lists. They live in space. They live in silence. They live in you when you finally give them room to exist. There's a subtle difference between a task and a story. A task ends when the box is checked. A story lingers, it echoes, it changes you. When I lived by lists, my days were nothing more than units of completion. They had no weight, no memory, no rhythm. I finished them, but I never felt them. But once the lists were gone, once I let go of measuring and began to live in the flow of the unplanned, something changed. My days stopped being blueprints. They became narratives. Not the kind you plan, the kind that unfold, slowly, strangely, beautifully. There was a morning when I sat outside longer than I ever had, just listening to the wind move through the trees. That moment didn't belong on a list. It had no measurable output, but it stayed with me. I remember the light, the air, the way my breathing matched the swaying branches. And there was a walk I took without a destination. I wandered into a part of the neighborhood I'd never seen before and found a small garden someone had built by hand. No sign, no fence. Just a quiet place that didn't ask anything from me. That felt like something from a story. The days began to move like music, not like steps. There were crescendos, unexpected conversations, bursts of laughter, the sudden inspiration to write, or make, or remember. There were silences, entire afternoons of stillness, reading without purpose, lying on the floor with my eyes closed. I didn't call these things productive, but I began to see something that I never saw on my lists, meaning. The kind of meaning that doesn't announce itself, the kind that reveals itself only in hindsight, like the final sentence of a chapter that suddenly ties everything together. Without the schedule, days had space to breathe. They became less about what I did and more about who I was within them. They didn't need to be optimized. They needed to be inhabited. And slowly, I began to notice something profound. The things I remembered, the moments that stayed with me, were never the ones I planned. Not the scheduled workout, not the perfectly timed meetings, not the completion of the third bullet point before lunch. Number. The things I remembered were the pauses, the in-between places, the detours, the emotions that rose uninvited, the thoughts I didn't expect to think. I realized something that changed everything. A life built only from tasks is a life that can be completed, but never fully lived. Stories don't unfold on paper. They unfold in attention, in presence, in letting go of the need to capture everything and instead feel it while it's here. And isn't that what we're really after? Not more control, but more connection. To the hour, to the self, to the mystery of what the day could become if we stopped trying to control it. I still don't know what makes a perfect day, but I know what makes a memorable one. It isn't structure, it's surprise, it's slowness, it's surrender, and no app in the world can schedule that. There's a kind of faith that has nothing to do with religion. It begins not in temples or teachings, but in the quiet decision to stop holding on so tightly, to let go of the idea that every hour must be accounted for, that every step must be tracked, that every breath must lead to something. Letting go of to-do lists didn't just change my schedule, it changed my relationship with life itself. Because to live without a list, truly live, requires trust. Not blind trust, not naive optimism, but a soft, steady faith that life knows how to carry itself. That things unfold, that meaning emerges, that you don't have to force the current to feel the river. This trust doesn't arrive overnight. It builds slowly, like muscle. It trembles at first, unsure of itself. The first few days, I still caught myself reaching for structure. Still felt that nervous tug, the need to organize, to track, to frame everything in the language of utility. But something inside me said, wait. Just wait. And as I did, I began to see something I had forgotten. Life still happened. Even when I didn't manage it, even when I didn't define it, even when I didn't control it. The sun still rose. The body still moved. The thoughts still came. The hands still reached for things that mattered. I began to trust myself again, not as a machine to be programmed, but as a living being who knows when to act, knows when to rest, knows when to begin, and when to do nothing at all. Trust is what grows in the absence of control, and in that trust, something else was born: rhythm. Not schedule rhythm. Rhythm comes from within. It changes with the seasons of the soul. It doesn't punish you for moving slower. It doesn't shame you for pausing. It listens and invites you to do the same. I began to wake when my body asked, not when the alarm screamed. I began to move not because the list said workout, but because stillness had ripened into movement. I began to speak only when there was something true to say. This trust is not laziness. It is not aimlessness. It is not the absence of action. It is the quality of action. It's the difference between pushing yourself like a product and allowing yourself to arrive in each moment with awareness. There were days that seemed less full, but somehow felt more complete, because I was no longer measuring life by how much I produced. I was measuring it without realizing by how much I noticed, how much I felt. And that's what trust does. It quiets the anxious voice that asks, "Am I doing enough?" and replaces it with a better question, "Am I here?" In the end, That's all trust really is: presence without proof, participation without planning, waking up without knowing, and still saying yes. I thought I would forget everything. That was my fear. That life without a to-do list would dissolve into chaos. That important things would slip through my hands. That I would become lazy, lost, or directionless. But I didn't forget the important things. I remembered them more clearly than ever, because they stopped being tasks. They became part of me. I didn't need a list to remind me to drink water when I was thirsty. I didn't need a reminder to call someone I loved when I missed them. I didn't need a schedule to tell me when to rest when I was tired. These things didn't need to be written down. They needed to be felt. That's what I learned. A life deeply lived organizes itself, not around tasks, but around meaning, around connection, around presence. When I let go of my lists, I discovered something I never expected. Life doesn't fall apart without control. It softens. It breathes. It unfolds at its own pace. I didn't become less disciplined. I became more alive. The discipline I thought I needed was fear in disguise. Fear of forgetting. Fear of wasting time. Fear of not doing enough. But time is not something you can waste. Time is something you either enter fully or avoid completely. And the truth is, I had been avoiding my life, filling it with tasks, with noise, with checkboxes, hoping that one day, after everything was completed, I would finally feel peace. But peace was never waiting at the end of a list. Peace was waiting here, in this moment, unstructured, unwritten, complete. I learned that life is not something to conquer. It's not a project. It's not a plan. It's a relationship with time, with self, with the world moving quietly around you. I learned that the best moments, the ones that shape you, arrive uninvited. You can't schedule joy. You can't plan wonder. You can't force presence. You can only be here, available, empty-handed, unprotected, and fully alive. No list can prepare you for that. No system can contain it. That's the risk of living without control. But it's also the reward. Because what I gained when I stopped writing to-do lists wasn't freedom from tasks. It was freedom from fear. It was remembering what life feels like before you measure it, before you divide it, before you try to catch it in words. And I don't know if I'll ever go back. Maybe one day I will. Maybe one day I'll need structure again. But for now, I trust myself. And I trust life. To unfold. To surprise me. To carry me. Without asking for permission. Without asking for a plan. Just asking me to show up. Fully. Quietly. Present. Exactly as I am.